we're gonna call a meeting to order. Let the minutes reflect all members are here. Welcome Manager Hockey back. And we'll set the agenda. Anybody like to add or subtract from the agenda today?
Board President, Board of Managers, staff had no changes.
Okay, anybody else? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we accept the agenda as printed.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approval of the March 21st Anoka, Washington Judicial Ditch 3 Repair Report, public hearing minutes.
Madam President, I move to approve the March 21st, 2019 Anoka, Washington Judicial Dish 3 Repair Report Public Hearing Minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
One abstention.
And one abstention, correct? Thank you.
And Madam President, I move to approve the March 27th, 2019 regular meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
One abstention.
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda.
Madam Chair, of course, I'm back. I don't know how often you all did anything about it, but here I am. I'm going to go.
So much for the 29-minute meeting.
We had 18 last week.
Okay, Boston Scientific, the first one. I noticed that there's not any kind of thing that shows me sort of the layout of it and where the holding pond or the
Let's
water.
let Nick walk
Oh,
through
Nick.
these with us. Yeah.
Okay. Nicely done. I just don't have any pictures. And this is to deal with the fact that it's got something like some 13 acres and 6.5 are going to become impervious. And
President Preiner and Manager Hockey, little quiz. What is it, 1910 or 1921 is the file number?
1910.
19010.
All right, thank you.
And then I'm going to do the next one, Nick, so don't leave.
Both of them.
Yeah, both of them, because you didn't give me any pictures. Resource of concern, and where's everything going? All the water.
There we go. Pictures.
Yeah.
Enough of that written word.
Are you new at this? Oh, there we go.
Never. All right, so there's a general location. It's on the eastern side of the Boston Scientific campus area, up along Lexington Avenue. And here is the project area again for the new impervious parking lot they're creating. Right about on the northern end here, there is a small drainage divide, the northern half going to Carth Lake and the southern half to Valentine Lake. They are using a underground system of filters to treat the water, along with a number of sumps to pre-treat before the water goes into those filters.
And so underground, is this parking lot going to have underground filters in the parking lot, or where are these?
That's correct, yep. I think there's an illustration here. Yep, right here on the southern half of the parking lot. On the screen, you'll see my cursor.
And of course, that's sized for the amount of water that's going to come off this impervious surface, and it'll all run into that, and then it'll get its filtering, and
Yep.
then go into the sanitary
Yep,
system.
so
That is-
the water comes off the parking lot,
Right.
goes into sumps, the sediment falls out. There's chambers that hold the volume of water.
Right.
Then it goes through the filters and then out off the site.
And we do some agreement that has to deal with the fact that the sediment would be pulled out when it gets full.
It's not an agreement, it's a declaration recorded on the property. Since these are filters, we'll reference the manufacturer's intended maintenance, et cetera, within that document.
Okay. And then the second one, because are they thinking about any underground filters? That one goes straight across and it goes into the stormwater system.
Let's take a
The
look.
next one is the 021.
Oh, I'm way ahead of you this time. Here we go, Midtown Village. This is an above-ground system. It's infiltration. So this is the new impervious area, and this is the proposed location of the infiltration system. which
And
you can
again,
see
that
here.
proposed area, the infiltration in that area, it's the same type of system again? It goes into some sort of a, where it's sediment?
The previous one on Boston Scientific
so
is
the-
filtration, water moving through a media filter that's manufactured. Here it's infiltration. Instead of discharging into the storm sewer system, the water goes through the ground, into the ground.
Into the ground. And again, it's adequate for all of this impervious surface, and it's going to be able to carry that water and get it as best as it can be clean before it heads over to our area of concern. or
Right.
what?
I would qualify your best as it can be to in compliance with the district rules. So I wouldn't come before you as a board unless it was in
Was doing
alignment with
everything
your
what it's
rules.
supposed to do. And that's where it's located there. Okay.
Correct.
And maintenance and everything again on that particular association.
Yep, stormwater BMPs require maintenance obligation.
Okay, just to save money on color print or black and white print, I can do it off a black and white print if you attach a picture like that.
Okay,
I need to see it. Thank you.
you're
Madam
welcome.
President? Nick, going back to 19-010, page 21 of our packet, we're talking about wetland impacts. This is the Boston Scientific parking lot. And there's a discussion in there that they're going to use on-site mitigation in the form of previously created wetland credits from a previous phase. And then you go on to explain that we're letting them do this time, but they can't do that in the future, so I need to better understand why they can do it this time.
Sure. It wasn't an uncommon practice in the recent past, I'll say late 90s, 2000s, for folks to overbuild on-site mitigation. I wonder if it made our picture. But there's a location on site where they expanded an existing wetland. It's off over here. And, just missed the photo. It's right over here on the Boston Scientific property. And create that on site. And the district's past permit recognized that they overbuilt that size, et cetera, recorded a declaration of restrictions for that intended purpose, et cetera. The state's, what's the word, made statement to those types of activities that it is the sole banker of wetland credits, and so those practices should be, no longer take place. This has been before the TEP, it's been vetted by them, they understand what we're doing here. It's not a practice that's allowed anymore. But in that the district, as the LGU for WACA, that we've made those credits available to them historically, they're okay with it.
Thank you, Nick.
You're welcome.
Madam President, thank you for bringing that interesting topic up, because I have a question now. Nick, why was the practice discontinued? Was it something that came from the Bowser, or is there a particular reason for that?
Bowser's interpretation of the state statute and rule that they are the sole banking authority, and so we can't have these unofficial banks, if you will, existing on the landscape. And Wetland Bank, as you know, through your Browns Preserve project, has a conservation easement, et cetera, and the obligation to the state and their obligation in return to make sure those are maintained to meet those quality standards. And so having numerous crediting systems on the landscape was not something they wanted LGUs entering into.
Well, Madam President, I want to make that clear that I thought that was a pretty good practice we had, in effect, allowing for the continuation
Yeah.
forward, especially in any of these areas which we're developing on. And I want to make certain to clear the public understood that this board did not enforce such a rule. This wasn't our idea. especially as we go into the future and we start developing larger tracts of property. I would hope that we can talk to the Board of Soil and Water Resources and maybe have them reconsider their stringency.
I agree with him. I agree with Waller. My gosh.
Let's not let that get around.
I know, we're not
You have
going
a
to tell
reputation
anybody.
to
It's on
protect.
TV now.
Yeah.
God, Waller.
President Priner, Board of Managers, just a statement of general response. So it doesn't preclude Boston Scientific from creating a wetland
Sure.
bank on their site. It doesn't preclude the consideration of on-site mitigation. It's just when those activities occur, they need to occur within the framework of the states being the wetland bank official.
So we could continue the practice then, but we'd have to do more paperwork.
Generally correct, under the constraints of the wetland banking program. So there you have minimum size
Yeah.
thresholds of 5 credits. So depending on how much property a landowner has, et cetera.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Nick.
I'm going to come in the office and find out more because you mentioned the Browns Preserve and credits and everything, and I want to find out a little bit more about that. Are they using some of the things that we have established for us to use credits on, or what? I will talk to you later.
Okay. I wasn't
I'll
quite
get
following the
you
inquiry.
in the next couple weeks.
Okey-doke.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, we'll need a motion for the consent agenda.
Madam President, I'll move the first part, table 1 of the consent agenda. Permits 19-010 and permits 19-021.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Okay. Lauren?
Good morning, President Priner, Board of Managers.
Aye.
For your consideration today is one cost share application on the consent agenda, consistent with the board's direction at the December 10th workshop last year. The application is for a rain garden at Pilgrim House Church in Arden Hills, right off of Highway 96. There's a table containing the highlights and a recommended motion on page 2, and then the full cost share application packet containing a memo from the Ramsey County Parks and Recreation SWCD, project location, project plan set, bids, and cost estimate starting on page 28 in your packets. Staff recommends approval of this application.
Okay. Questions?
Yeah. Eligible cost is $12,100.
Yes.
Funding recommendation not to exceed 75, so it's up to 75. So we're
Yes.
approving 75?
Yes.
Okay, because that doesn't say that in the verbiage of the motion that's suggested. I mean, I just don't see the dollar figure.
It's
That's all.
President Priner, Manager Hockey, the dollar is actually in the table.
Yes, it's in
on-
the table.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the motion
As
references the
outlined in the
table.
above table. Okay, when I read it, I just wanted to see the number, 7,500.
Sure.
Yeah, on the motion itself. Okay, I'll make a motion then to approve the water quality grant contract R19-01 is outlined in the table at the amount of $7,500 in accordance with Rice Creek Watershed staff recommendation to establish program guidelines.
Second.
I'm putting it in there.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Open mic. Is there anybody in the audience that'd like to speak today? Anybody? Seeing none, we'll go to items requiring board action. Lauren?
Again,
Second item for your consideration today is the City of Dellwood's local water plan. In your packets, you'll find, starting on page 48, the draft resolution, the executive summary on page 50, the identified issues on pages 52 to 53, and then the city's CIP table on page 54. City of Dellwood submitted their local water plan to all agencies for formal agency review on January 11th of last year. The district reviewed for consistency with the district's watershed management plan and Minnesota Rules 8410 and Minnesota Statute 103B 235, and the district submitted comments on the plan. City's final draft submitted to the district on April 1st of this year sufficiently addresses all comments and is now consistent with the district's district and state requirements. City of Dellwood has identified a few water resource issues within and near the city, including drainage or flooding issues, and the city is involved in 3 TMDLs. The city drains to Ramsey, Washington Judicial Ditch 1, which does not have a TMDL but is impaired for dissolved oxygen. And the city is listed as a regulated MS4 on the Bald Eagle Lake TMDL, the Peltier and Centerville Lake TMDL, and the Upper Mississippi River Bacteria TMDL. And there are drainage or flooding issues along Highway 244 and north and south peninsula roads, which are bounded by a large wetland area. And these are again listed on pages 52 and 53 in your packets. To address these issues, the city will investigate potential solutions for the drainage issues, which may result in a partnership with the district, the city, and MnDOT. The city is considering replacing culverts underneath Peninsula Road, which they do have in their CIP table on page 54, and I have highlighted on this slide in yellow. This is a project that could result in a partnership with the district. And along with the replacement of the culverts at Peninsula Road, the culverts underneath Highway 244 may also need repair and replacement in conjunction with the city's street improvement project at Peninsula Road. To address the impaired waters, the city will work with the district and the adjacent communities to meet the categorical waste load allocations of the Bald Eagle Lake TMDL and the Peltier and Centerville Lake TMDL. And the city will continue to implement its current ordinance for citizens to pick up animal waste to help with the Upper Mississippi River Bacteria TMDL. And these, again, the solutions are on page 53 in your packets. And to conclude, staff find that the City of Dellwood's local water plan is now consistent with the district's district and state requirements. Staff recommends approval of the City of Dellwood's local water plan as submitted to the district on April 1st of this year.
Only comment I have is you're doing an excellent job. I can't believe it. You're reading it, it just goes right off the top of your head. You're not reading any notes. You've done such a thorough job of looking it through and everything like that. So I guess the motion is that down here.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. You're doing great.
Thank you.
Good hire, Phil, whenever she came on board. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we offer Resolution 2019-10 and its adoption.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? It will be a roll call. Waller?
Yes.
Hockey?
Yes.
Bradley?
Yes.
Wageman?
Yes.
Reiner, yes. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. All right, number 3, consider final order.
What about number 2?
Oops, I missed 2?
Request.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. Final pay request.
That's
and
because you
answer.
don't want to pay
Kyle.
any money.
Kyle.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thought we were done with this back in December. There were still 3 months of engineering invoices that had not been submitted and paid by the City of St. Anthony to WSB for the last bit of closeout work on the Mirror Lake Improvements Project. So that's what this is, kind of 3 straggling invoices that were paid earlier this year. It's a very small amount of money, but our project agreement with St. Anthony would still call for us to reimburse them, at this point, half of that expense. So I do know at this point this is the final, we're done
Final.
with reimbursements to St. Anthony for that project, which has been 100% completed and has been successful. So with that, staff recommends that we issue a payment to the City of St. Anthony in the amount of $2,471.88 as the final reimbursement for this project.
We're really nickel and diming this now. If we only paid $2,400 after what, 892 or almost $1 million bucks?
We're at we're a little over $1 million on this one.
A little over $1 million, and we have this, well, I certainly will make a motion that we approve the City of St. Anthony's reimbursement request of $2,471.88 pursuant to the August 25th, 2015 cooperative agreement.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Boy,
All in favor?
Aye.
there goes the pennies.
Pennies. All right, now we're at number 3.
Board President, Board of Managers, starting on page 59 through 63 of your packet, to find for your consideration, the final order directing repairs of Anoka Washington Judicial Ditch 3, Phase 1. The AWJD 3 is part of the district's trunk conveyance system. The majority of the cost of the proposed repair would be paid ad valorem tax, consistent with the repair policy adopted by the Watershed Management Plan. The board, before it held its final public hearing, did hold an informational meeting to allow the landowners affected by the repair to become familiar with the repair and to provide information to the engineer. Then the public hearing was held on 3/21/19. At that meeting, the final outcome was that the board directed staff to prepare findings in order for the repair of Anoka Washington JD 3 Phase 1 according with the engineer's recommendation, and the findings of that order be consistent with the proceedings, including any comments and evidence preceded, and that the hearing continued to the board meeting today, regular board meeting on April 10th, 2019, for the purpose of considering and adopting the findings and order for the repair. There were no written comments received in the extended written comment period. The order identifies, therefore, on page 63, for your consideration, the order implementation of the repair of Anoka Washington JD 3 Phase 1, consistent with the engineer's recommended repair alternative and consistent with the CIP contained in the watershed plan, and directing the administrator to take all actions for implementation of the repair in a manner consistent in compliance with law. John Kolb, your drainage attorney, is in attendance if you have any specific questions on the order.
Okay, I think at this point I have to recess the regular meeting and reconvene the public hearing on the repair Phase 1 of AWJD 3. The question before the board is of the adoption of Resolution 2019-11, final order directing the repair of Anoka Washington Judicial Ditch 3, Phase 1.
Madam President, I'll move resolution 2019-11, the Rice Creek Watershed District Board of Managers final order directing the repair of Anoka Washington County Judicial Ditch 3, Phase 1. And the order says A, the Board of Managers orders implementation of repair.
Madam Chair, point of order. This is a recess for hearing. Do we, during hearings, make motions, or do we have to call the meeting back to order? Is this okay to have a motion read at this point, or do we wait until we call the meeting back after we have a hearing on it? Just a point of order.
No problem.
President, in opening a hearing, the main purpose is to take public comment, and then
Yeah.
you can close and then take action.
And
So I don't know
then
if there's any
take
further
action.
comments you wish to receive.
Okay, well, to make it correct then, let's ask if there's anybody in the audience that'd like to comment on this before we have a vote. Please come up to the podium, name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Steve Smits. I live at 4620 Flora Way North in Hugo. So I live in the Creekside Villas, and I'm a member of the Homeowner Association Board of Directors. And I came to this meeting here today just to gather information. I would say the communications about this project have been less than adequate, and everyone's very concerned about what's going on. And I guess the comment I would like to make is, can we be involved in understanding what the extent of the tree removal will be and the repairs in through that area that is highly populated by homeowners?
Okay, I would like to have Mr. Kolb answer that since we've been in this process. If you go ahead and take a seat.
Madam President, members of the board, thank you. I'm just going to direct you to the portion of the order and the comments from Brian Baer, who's the administrator at the City of Hugo. He actually raised this issue during the main portion of the public hearing, during the public comment portion of the public hearing, because based on our direct notice for landowners traversed by the ditch, some of these developments that are adjacent to have common interest lots and those sorts of things. And he did recommend that for all of our future landowner meetings related to the scope of the repair, the scope of tree removal, that we make specific contact with the associations affiliated with these developments, including Creekside Villas, which is the organization that Mr. Smits was here, I believe, to represent or on behalf of. So that is specifically addressed in your order. And I know at the staff level, we do have a plan to gather the correct contact information for those individuals so that as the scope of the repair is being finalized, those entities will have an opportunity to gather more information and understand the exact scope of the repair and express any specific concerns about the maintenance corridor and the preservation of any, specific trees or facilities that might be of concern to them.
Madam President? Mr. Kolb, would you please describe, if I understand it, it's going to be there would be yet another public hearing where we would sit down with drawings of the area where individuals could sit down with our own staff and go lot by lot how we're going to do this, where the trees would be, et cetera?
Madam President, Manager Bradley, we do not have a subsequent public hearing. We do have planned, however, at least one set of informational meetings with the landowners that will be specifically noticed. It will be the exact format, Manager Bradley, that you describe. We'll have the actual maps of the maintenance corridor. We'll have it laid out parcel by parcel. Individual landowners can come and look at how the specific repair is being planned across their property. And in fact, before we get into the exact detail of that, this meeting is going to refine that so that we start out with a general understanding of what the proposed plan is and how the repair will be configured. And then this meeting will further refine that. And so it gives both the landowners an opportunity to gather more information. In the case of Creekside Villas, the homeowners association an opportunity to, or their representatives, an opportunity to gather that information, and then an opportunity for feedback to the engineers that are designing the specific scope of the repair and the configuration of the repair so that we can address any specific concerns that are raised by those individuals at that meeting.
Please.
Can I just state it here?
You'll have to go to the mic, just so it's on the record properly.
Thank you, Mr. Kolb, for your response. And I was just wondering if you could tell us what would be the approximate timing of these informational meetings?
Madam President, members of the board, depending on the outcome of the vote today, I think that we were looking at maybe within the next 3 to 6 months at a minimum of having those meetings. Chris might have a better idea of what he thinks that timing would be if the vote were to go forward with the repair today.
Madam President, Mr. Kolb is right. Approximately 3 to 6 months would be the approximate time frame. We do anticipate that prior to that there will be district staff and engineer staff walking out through the properties to do investigations along there. But again, the time frame for the meetings will be several months from now. We again don't know the exact time frame for that. It's going to depend a lot on various conditions, how fast the process moves, et cetera.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else like to speak today? Anybody else? So we close our hearing and we go to comments, correct? And I move the consideration of Resolution 2019-11 be postponed indefinitely.
Second.
We have a second. Okay, and I'm going to, for the records, put this in verbally, and I'd like it verbatim. The board directed preparation of the resolution at the recess final hearing consideration repair of AWJD 3 on March 21st, 2019. The findings are consistent with the proceedings, including all comments and evidence presented at the hearing. However, more recently, introduction and progress of House File 2314 and Senate File 2372 has a potential of changing both the basis of funding presented at the hearing and the board's ability to execute the repair under its current budgeting assumptions. Because the introduction of House File 2314 and Senate File 2372 calls into question the board's ability and authority to conduct the proposed repair as planned, I feel it is appropriate to postpone consideration until we can be sure that our current funding process and budgeting assumptions remain valid. For example, until House File 2314 and Senate File 2372 or other similar legislation is withdrawn, fails, or is vetoed. Unfortunately, because the fate of House File 2314 and Senate File 2372 or other similar legislation is unclear, this motion must be for indefinite postponement. The legislation proposed in House File 2314 and 2372 or anything similar to it, where specific allocation of ad valorem tax revenues is required on a county basis, undermines the historic practices and policies of the Rice Creek Watershed District, undermines the fundamental principles of the watershed law and the Metropolitan Surface Water Management Act, undermines principles of one watershed planning and watershed-based funding, and calls into question the validity of our current planning efforts toward adoption of our watershed management plan update. I urge the board to consider the broader implications of legislation as it relates to other current and future actions, programs, and projects of the Rice Creek Watershed District. Invite a special meeting for the purpose of discussing the policy implications of the proposed legislation. And that's my comments. Any further comments?
Madam President? I've been trying to figure out how we proceed if that legislation were enacted since the day I found out about it. And I do think we would clearly want to do it. We'd want to do the project. The project needs to be done. We have to figure out a way to do it. I think the way we would do it, and I like the idea of having a meeting to discuss this. I think the way you do it is you'd establish a water management district for Washington County. But, you know, and then we'd have to recover the funds there. And the reason I think that is, well, the 90% funding requirement doesn't allow us to consider value received by Washington County from our projects. It doesn't allow us to recover approximately 50% of our common and joint costs, our rents, our salaries. By my estimates, we'd have a $450,000 annual shortfall within the other two counties as a result of it. We need to discuss it. We need to figure it out. And so I support your idea of us sitting down and talking about this.
I agree. There's too many things up in the air at this point. We don't know where we're gonna be or how many things that could change to go along with this before it all becomes final. So I also support it.
Madam Chair, I think that just for the public that might be viewing this, we should understand where Mike Bradley just came up with a 90% amount of funding it. And it's because when you referred to the Senate file and House file, in there it's specifying that monies that are collected within Washington County's portion of our Rice Creek watershed, that 90% would stay within Washington County. And what we're looking at is a project that's going to be quite a bit more expensive than even the 90% that's collected. But going more than that is the idea that this sets a precedence too. So I think any comment or any kind of workshop or comments or anything we should have, we should go into it more thoroughly to see what would be the alternatives as to how this would ever be funded.
How would we do this best? You know, the other alternative is to ask John Kolb, you know, if we pass this thing and then the legislation passes, you know, at what point can we go back and say to people out, yeah, we told you it was gonna be free, but never mind, it's not gonna be free now. Would we have to go back?
Now
to
you have a
additional
taxing
public
district.
hearings? What would that mean?
Nothing is free, but it meant that it had been ad valorem rather than just
Right.
on their back.
No such thing as free, and, you know, and that's kind of like the $450,000 figure thrown out. I don't know where
Manager
that
Waller,
comes
wait,
either.
the question was asked.
Madam President, Manager Bradley, if I can restate the core of Manager Bradley's question, I think it goes to the fundamental basis of funding the repair of Anoka Washington JD3 that was presented at the public hearings, which was as part of your trunk conveyance policy, which is ad valorem tax district-wide. the legislation that's been proposed has a potential effective date of January 1, 2020, which is prior to your anticipated and currently budgeted and planned implementation of this repair. So you're ordering it now and authorizing it now, but through your budgeting process and in your plan, you really don't have plans to construct it until 2020 at the earliest. And so if I, again, in a convoluted way of restating your question, how do we go back then if that was the basis of this, but then the passage of this law, were to be passed, prevents us from executing on that basis? Number one, I think you do have to reopen and go back now with a new plan for how you do that. My thought is that that is exactly what President Priner is suggesting in terms of having a broader discussion about the implications of this legislation and how it affects your historical practices and your planned practices going forward. So the means by which you do it, whether it's a water management district, whether you try to set up some kind of county-based special taxing district, I don't know if that's, there's some mention of that in the watershed law, but I don't know that it's ever been done before. But the mechanisms in the law would be to reopen the hearing, reestablish a basis for funding if the current basis of funding proves untenable given the change in the law at a minimum.
Then if we decide just to proceed with this, we can just, with a vote of 3, bring it back, right?
You
And
would.
if we don't change our funding.
From a parliamentary basis, if my understanding is correct, you can remove the indefinite postponement by majority vote of the board and place it back on the agenda for consideration
In the future.
in the future.
Yeah, once we decide on the funding.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Other
if I
comments?
made a motion right now to table, would it be just tabled to call back?
The
Or
motion,
specific?
the motion on the floor is to postpone, which I
Okay, motion.
believe is the appropriate motion, because you're basically not gonna take any action on this until other things are resolved.
Okay.
Typically, a motion to table is because you have something more urgent that has to come up before this, and I guess you could weigh it either way. I'm not gonna get into a parliamentary procedure fight with Louis. He's seated at the dais. He can make that call, but I don't find that your current motion for postponement is inappropriate.
Okay. Manager Waller?
Well, Madam President, you're speculating that this particular legislation is going to be enacted. And
We don't know that.
And you don't know that it will, and you don't know that it won't. And so therefore, by postponing this, maybe you may be affected if the legislation was enacted. But as we had an update last night at the meeting, the legislation hasn't made any progress. There's been no committee hearing. There's no schedule for committee hearing. So it doesn't sound like it's going to go anywhere at this time because all the committee hearings are finished.
Can I ask the question, but then it can come up next year, right, according to the, I think,
Certainly it can come up next year.
because it's already there, even though if it doesn't pass this year, it'll still come up next year, unless it's removed.
Unless it's withdrawn.
Yeah.
Facts as we know them, it has bipartisan authors in the Senate. It has bipartisan authors in the House. At least one of the chief authors in the House is the chair of the Environmental Policy and Natural Resources Policy and Finance Committee. So that there's horsepower behind the bill, and the bill will remain viable until the end of the biennium. And so, again, it could be reintroduced in the next session if it doesn't make any further progress in this session. So it does sit out there as an unknown for the district.
Unless they withdraw the authors.
And again, I don't know exactly what the legislative process is for that, whether they can withdraw it. But I think that would be at least greater surety to the district that its traditional funding sources and methods would be less, I guess, less at risk than perhaps say it is with a pending legislation of this type.
Okay, any further comments?
Well, Madam President, again, you're speculating as to whether or not the project should go forward, depending on funding.
Yeah.
But you have said that the project should go forward.
We
And
agree, we agree on
I
that.
think
Yeah.
the project should commence to go forward. If you have to have a change in how you fund it later on, then by the time we get towards implementation stages, that's a possibility, you can make that change. But at this time, you don't know that one way or the other. And I think that's the forwardness of it. But, you know, if you wish to, I would not support your motion for postponement. I see no reason for this. This project is already behind a long time. It's already correcting, finding errors that were made in previous work done here by the district and to correct it. And there's a need for it. I don't think that the funding issue is that big of an issue, really.
Well, we do represent all the
and,
counties, and I think funding
and-
is a huge issue.
And I think that adjustment in funding is a talk we're going to have at the workshop in a few minutes when we're done with this meeting, because you have many, many water management districts, which I see are really, I was questioning why they're even going to be continued, or some of them expanded. So, but the funding for it issue of it, like I said, that legislation is there. Whether it goes anywhere or not, who knows? You have to wait and see.
There's
Madam
an
Steve
easy
had a-
way to solve the who knows, and that's to
Yeah.
ask that it be withdrawn.
Right.
Ask the legislation to be withdrawn,
I see,
and we can proceed.
Madam President. So,
I mean, you know, if you want to, we
I
want
see.
certainty to know
I
how
see.
to proceed.
the assurity to know to proceed. So, in other words, the project stays there, and unless the legislation is withdrawn, then,
Defeated
or defeated,
or passed.
or passed, till something happens for it, you don't wish to go forward with the project that you say must be done.
We
That's
don't
correct.
know how it's gonna be funded. I'm not gonna,
Well, that's why we're going to have a meeting to discuss
Yeah.
how we could proceed, if we can proceed.
yeah.
And Madam Chair, I can't go out and buy a car and not know how it's going to be funded. They're not even going to give me the car until some way I get a loan, or I found cash somewhere, or whatever, or I steal it. But at any rate, I
Cancel
can't
that
do
off of
it.
here.
But I'm just saying, you cannot, I don't know how you can do anything and plan to do a project or do anything, build a house, unless you've got some way that you know that's going to be funded.
And we're going and telling the public how it's gonna be done.
That they wouldn't have
Already
any-
you've told it.
Yes, and now we're gonna switch it up at the 9th hour? No, that
Madam
doesn't
President.
make sense to me at all.
Madam President, you don't know how, you do know how you're going to fund it currently. You can go forward with that program. There have been issues in the past where we've changed the funding in the streams. I'm going to give you an example of ditch number 4 and 15. When we added an extra maintenance cost to it, we funded it by that, and then we put in an extra maintenance funding on it, which was a double tax. That really wasn't the idea when we started out, but during the process, it developed that way. So changing funding sources during the project issue is nothing that hasn't happened in the past.
Which is why I asked Mr. Kolb what we would do, and he said we would go back and reopen the public hearings. So I don't want to see it delayed. I hope we don't delay the project, but this is something we need to work our way through.
And we have to
Agreed.
set a meeting, a special meeting to discuss it. So any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
No,
One no. Okay, we'll move on. Houston Engineering, Phil?
Board President, Board of Managers, starting on page 65 of your packet, you'll find Houston Task Order 1908. As you are aware, the board included in 2019 a budget to address boundary adjustments in a more systematic manner around the district. Attached starting on page 66 of your packet is Houston Task Order to initiate the technical process of confirming the district's hydrologic and associated political boundary along the common boundary with Sunrise River WMO, Coon Creek, and Mississippi WMO in Anoka County. The task order does not include any work related to the Bowser boundary adjustment petition process. Houston's estimated total cost of $38,000. Staff recommends approval of Houston engineering request for services for a total cost of $38,000 as defined in task order 1908, dated March 29th, 2019.
Thank you. Chris, could you define that a little better as to what are the, which boundaries? Do you have a map or something that we can take a quick look at?
Madam President, I don't have a map with me, but essentially we would be looking at the entire length of the boundary within Anoka County. So this would include the common boundary with the Sunrise River Water Management Organization, with the Coon Creek Watershed District, and with the Mississippi Water Management Organization.
Good, I thank you. I was going to ask for the map too.
Good. It just to give us a general.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're gonna have to leave your seat, Chris. We do the overhead, please.
Madam President, Board of Managers. So yeah, thank you very much, Nick, here. On this page here, you can see the Anoka boundary would be on generally on the west side of the page, shown by my pen on here. The border with the Sunrise River Water Management Organization is generally along this area here. The border with the Coon Creek Watershed District is generally along this area shown here on the boundary. And then the border with the Mississippi Water Management Organization would be this portion that is, oops, oh, there we go. This portion down here, that'd be kind of in that Fridley Columbia Heights area. And again, this process is very similar to the process that we went through about 3 years ago, where we reviewed the entire length of the boundary within Washington County.
Madam Chair, how many acres is this covering? This is a huge portion.
Madam President, Manager Hockey, yeah, it is a substantial portion. It's roughly, a third of the border of the Rice Creek Watershed District. So what we do is we utilize as much as we can information that we have in the office, LiDAR information, other information we get from the neighboring water management organizations, and then we'll be doing a field verification on a few selected areas if we have questions about which way the water is flowing, to see if maybe there's a culvert out there that we aren't aware of, can see which way the water is moving out there. But most of it is within office and office methods to try to determine the boundary.
Okay, move it up a little bit. It looks like a long, long swipe of our western border, northwestern border. Is there any calculation as to, because we have a watershed taxation that comes, is there, I guess I'm into sort of the money thing. Does this justify doing it as to the money that you're gonna capture? And when you said you're going into the part that has to do with the Mississippi Water Management Organization, are we moving down into any neighboring with Hennepin County? Hennepin County is just a sliver of us. That's all, it's, where is that? I mean, what county is that part in, on the very south end of it? So I'm looking at the property tax evaluation, things that are, when we do this, there's gonna be projects that are gonna have to be done within there. And are we getting enough money in there to do some of the things that's gonna be ad valorem throughout our whole project? So I've got 100 questions, but let me know about that Mississippi WMO. Is that anything to do with Hennepin County?
Madam President, Manager Hockey, so the first question first, whether we know if there's going to be a net increase or decrease in the area within the Rice Creek boundary, I don't know at this time. We won't know until we actually go through the process. Again, the purpose of this process is really to try to serve the residents best by managing those properties that are draining into the district or draining into parts elsewhere. And we do recognize that there have been issues with the boundary that we've already identified. We know of, for instance, a couple of recent permits in City of Blaine where those properties were within the Rice Creek Watershed District boundary, but were draining into Coon Creek Watershed District. It creates challenges with trying to manage the implementation of the rules properly when you have properties that are on one side or the other. Regarding your question about the Mississippi Water Management Organization, Hennepin County, the area we're looking at, it will be only that portion of the boundary within, with Mississippi WMO that's within Anoka County.
Okay.
So Mississippi WMO is partially in Anoka County, partially in Hennepin County. Again, this line right here shows where that common boundary is with the Mississippi WMO. But we're only going to be looking at that portion that's in Anoka County. We set this up to strictly be an Anoka County review. And then, as we've discussed before in the past, there has been discussion about in the future considering implementing the same kind of process within Ramsey County to essentially complete the boundary within the watershed district all the way through. And again, we've already completed that portion in Washington County.
Phil?
Board President, Manager Hockey, if I may add on to Engineer Otterness. So this is something that was vetted by the board and approved in your 2019 budget. And it's also, if you recall, incorporated into your Chapter 4 of your draft water management plan for 20 to 2029. It's a new program called Boundary Management that the board has asked for through the strategic direction process and now has been incorporated into that draft. We know that we have regular comments on our boundary. We've just completed one in Washington County with a resident asking for that, and that we worked with the cities of Hugo and Grant on that one, and we just completed that a few months ago due to concerns. We know we have concerns on some of the drainage areas in Anoka County. We just changed about 2 to 3 years ago a boundary when we were working on 31 and 46. We've changed in the past 10, 22, 32. We have massive developments going on in the Blaine area where we know we have boundary concerns as well. So we have regular needs. The main purpose of this is to rectify boundaries that have historically been done, quite frankly, without digital, current
the new technology.
digital technology.
Sure.
And that because of the flat nature of our watershed district, we now can get sub-foot, accuracy. And so, and plus with the developments, we know that that's a changing, ever-changing boundary. So the board, in its strategic direction in that conversation, we know that it's a need. It's something that's been requested by residents, and we also know it's been requested by both our partners and by landowners as things are developing. So that was the need for that. This is the first phase of a multi-phased effort going forward, based at least on what you've directed us so far as your goals in the watershed plan.
If we have 187 acres or square miles of property right now, and with this large one, you don't have a figure to tell me how many square miles we're gonna have now in our district?
Madam President, Manager Hockey, no, we don't, and that's gonna be one of the outcomes from this process is to determine that.
Determine that, so
Yeah.
you don't even have an off the ball of head, the top of your head type thing.
Oh,
Madam President, I'd point out that this has been a long-term program. We began it many years ago with Badness Heights Water Management
Yeah, I know,
Organization.
I was gonna ask that too.
And so we've worked our way, that's Ramsey County's area. We've kind of worked our way north on the east side since then.
Yeah.
Now we're turning around, coming down to the other end. We haven't worked it on the southwest side where Hennepin County, St. Anthony is yet. But, so I think it's a good idea to continue. I don't know that it's going to make that much of a dramatic difference in the size of the district itself, but it certainly resolves some local problems that we've had over the years, such as we were permitting, we've done some of this already up in the city of Columbus, and it straightened it out, and it's just one of those things you have to tidy up when you have the better technology to be able to do and move forward.
Madam President, one thing I'll point out, and Kyle Axtell was gracious enough to point that out, and I'm glad he did. We do not, actually within our task order, include this portion of the district that's within Anoka County and this Lino Lakes portion that is bordering on the,
Venice Heights.
Venice Lakes, WMO. So I think that that portion would be most appropriate to review in the future when we review the rest of the portion of Ramsey County that is within the Rice Creek Watershed District, simply because that would be a more contiguous area within there. But just wanted to point that out, that our task order did not include reviewing that portion of the Anoka boundary that is essentially disconnected from the rest of the Anoka County border.
It always has looked weird to have Venice Heights Water Management Organization in there, and that makes it a horseshoe, you know, why in the world is that? I don't want to get into the political discussion on that, but those are some of the questions I had on what you're doing right now.
Yes, well,
So this is a good start, it's just that, and you don't think we should add that area and have it all completed?
Until we haven't brought it in yet. I'm just looking at, projects that might come about, and I'm gonna call it income, because it's property taxes, it's put on our property tax, or, you know, water management, or our Rice Creek watershed, or any watershed district comes in underneath that other part in our property tax, and I just looking at the consequences of what we're taking on.
Anything else? Otherwise, we'll have a motion, please.
Madam President, I move to approve Houston
Thank you, Chris.
Engineering request for services with total cost of $38,000 as defined in the HEI memo dated March 29, 2019, and authorize the board president to execute the document.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion? Yeah, when are we gonna be done with this, Chris?
Madam President.
Target date? Target time, I should say.
Yeah, I see we don't have that, the end date in our task order. Certainly, we would plan to be done with this process by the end of the year.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Financial.
Board President, Board of Managers, starting on page 73 of your packet, you'll find a cover letter related to something that was also included in your packet, which is the black book with our, there you go. Manager Hockey is modeling that nice book. From Red Path, that again is our 2018 District Financial Report and Audit. On April 1st, the district received the 2018 Financial Report and Audit prepared by Red Path, dated December 31st, 2018. The report of compliance audit are required annually in Minnesota statutes 103B and 103D. The report on internal control identified that the auditors did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that are considered to be material weakness. The letter also identifies that the result of the test disclosed no instances of noncompliance or other matters that are required to be reported under government auditing standards. The report on the Minnesota legal compliance stated that nothing came to the attention of the auditors that caused them to believe the district failed to comply with the provisions of Minnesota legal compliance audit guides for political subdivisions. Again, this is a clean audit. That's my word. That's not a technical word. And I want to thank Treasurer Wagaman for his assistance, review, and leadership on this. I also want to thank Teresa for her great work on this. She does an outstanding job on these audits, and it's a testament to her deliberate and professional work that these continually come in, year out, with nearly or no blemishes at all. That's not common in the world of local government. And it's a testament to staff and to Teresa specifically, so I wanted to thank her for that.
And I'd like to thank everybody too.
Yeah, I would too. I think kudos to the staff. That's amazing to have that clean of an audit, and it's been the same virtually every year, so keep up the good work.
Okay, we'll need a motion.
Madam President, I move to accept and authorize the filing of the Rice Creek Watershed District 2018 Annual Financial Report and Audit.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Board President, Board of Managers, on 75, in your packet, you'll find a cover letter that I did send, put in front of you it was the exact same language, but just cleaned up without the strikeout underlined as what's in your packet on 75. I passed out before the meeting. The district would like to update the financial and accounting manual cash and investment policy to include the additional language to address the financial products in the 4M fund through the PMA Financial Network. Again, Treasurer Wagman was involved with the review of this previously. Generally, it is an update from the 12/12/18, so you just did update this recently, but then since the transfer, which is currently underway from our current bank to the 4M fund, which you've already previously approved, they have additional products. We are not going to use any of those additional investments that you see on the second page on related to the money markets managed by the trust or the brokerage affiliated trusts or fixed rate funds, anything that would involve the PMA broker yet. We will just be using the same exact type money markets that we are using in our current bank and transfer it over the exact same program. The plan would be once the watershed plan has been approved and we know the use of the fund balance and how timely and how you'd like to lay that out, you'd have a better understanding of that. Then staff will come back, working with the treasurer, and present to you a investment policy and program at that time. So we're not going to transfer into any of this stuff that we're talking about the need for at this exact time, but we will use that soon. So that's, the need for that is that, and the purpose of this is that the board authorize that transfer into the 4M fund because of the potential of using some of these other funds that have the ability to utilize all the available authorities to us in Minnesota Statutes 118A. However, we're not gonna do that at this time, but we still need this authority per the proposed
And that'll come back
language.
to us before there is an actual change.
Correct.
Okay. All right, we'll need a motion, page 76.
Madam President, I move to adopt the revisions to the Rice Creek Watershed District Financial and Accounting Manual dated April 10, 2019, with any non-material changes, and direct the administrator to incorporate in the district's policy and procedures manual.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Here, check register.
Madam President, I move to approve the check register dated April 10th, 2019, in the amount of $43,020.25, prepared by Redpath and Company.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, engineers report. Anything, questions of Chris? Manager's update. One thing I'd like to bring up right away is how soon can we get our meeting set up? Phil, do you have any dates in mind? Or not, probably yet?
I don't have them, but
Okay.
perhaps if you'd like to talk about that or give me some dates of what the five of you have available, that would be the starting point.
Okay.
And this meeting is the one that would be dealing with
That will be
our-
talking about the
This
The funding,
files,
yeah,
the
yeah.
funding
Mhm.
aspect?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're so used to the Monday type workshops, I
Yeah.
guess, or which
That's
we've
true.
done on a lot of things.
Could we
And
start
who's
right away
going,
on the
who we're
15th?
going to invite to the meeting? Will we invite anybody other than just us discussing it?
We'll have to look at who we think would be the right people for it, what the rules would be and.
Okay,
what
so
we can
then
do.
it might be somewhere or another have, other people are
Could
going
have,
to,
could have,
could come
yes,
have it
yep.
and have it where.
Or maybe we want
probably
to have one
during-
first and then decide who we want to
Yeah,
talk to, you
then,
know.
I was gonna say, if
Well-
anybody else were, it'd be during the workday, I assume,
Madam
not
President,
an
why don't
evening
we
meeting.
get together what the agenda and rules are going to be discussed before we set a date, so we know what we're talking about.
Well, we can set a date and then provide that so that we have, I just want to get it going so that we can continue if possible. It doesn't matter to me, it's up to the board.
Okay.
The 15th or the 8th, if you were looking at Mondays.
And you wouldn't want to do it after a regular
I
meeting
could not do
again?
the 15th.
Okay, we could do it after the meeting on,
The 24th would be the
24th.
next one. I'm okay for after the meeting the 24th. We don't have to then settle on another workshop unless there's something that you can tie in with it, like
works.
something Kyle has on the plans.
Okay.
What, was that after the board meeting on the
Yeah,
24th?
after the board
Yeah.
meeting on the
Yeah, that would-
24th.
That would work for me too.
Well, let's go ahead and set that.
Do you want it in the middle of the room here, or do you want to use the room in the back, or do you want to go to a different
We
facility?
can use in the room in the back,
Room in
if
the
it's
back.
available.
Whatever they say
Whatever
is
they have
available,
available.
whatever Shoreview
Okay.
says is available.
And then
Okay.
we'll try to put together what the process is and what we're looking to do and accomplish and
Okay,
So it'd be immediately after your next regular board
after
meeting?
our regular
right.
board meeting.
right,
Okay.
on the
Okay.
24th.
Do we need to have a vote on that, or?
Yeah, is that a consensus of everybody? Waller? Excuse me,
Yeah, you-
Manager Waller.
You can direct staff, that would be appropriate.
Okay, then for that, we will go ahead and
Is
try
this
to,
a workshop or a regular meeting?
No,
it'll be a workshop.
just a workshop.
So yes, it'd be good to have a motion then. It's another workshop, I guess. It's
Okay.
a separate.
I'll
it's
make a
separate deal.
motion then that we would schedule a workshop after our regular meeting on the 24th of April, starting as soon as the meeting's over, and the place it would be, whatever Shoreview would state would be convenient for them.
And that is to consider funding options for the repair of Anoka Washington judicial district.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
And I would like to see us go a little broader,
Oh, okay.
you know, what does this mean for us going forward in
Agreed.
terms of planning budgets? What does it mean for us going forward in terms of the plan? I mean, we
A
can't
whole
work all-
open discussion.
Basically,
Yeah.
what would this legislation do to us?
Okay. Everybody agree? We have a motion?
Yes, that's,
That's the motion?
Yeah.
should we write
Se-
this up for the
second?
court recorder or try to pull it all out? It's a all-encompassing workshop.
Okay, and a second? Did we have a second?
Second.
A second.
A second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on with that. Managers' updates, anybody else? Manager Waller?
Yes, I attended the Legislative Water Committee meeting, and Jason Meckel was there, and he commented that he expect White Bear Lake to be outflowing, and he mentioned that one of the reasons he felt the lake was going to have elevation was that the St. Paul Water Authority had stopped pumping or using some 25 or 30 wells that they have in the Vadnais Heights area, and that they would go to all surface water from the Mississippi River. And of course, I don't know if the board's aware of it or not, but I believe they built those wells in the 90s, and they were built after the drought of '88 in that area. And so they felt that was the capacity was going to coming out of there would make a significant difference in the draw from the aquifer, keeping the aquifer up higher, and thus the lake elevation higher. So we'll see what happens there, and they expect that the impact of discontinuing this is going to be substantial. So we'll find out. That's all we can say about it at this time. But every time I've listened to Meckel, and there's been a little bit more information, and this was the most informative presentation because it was before the legislators. I think, you know, and so
Stepped it up.
that's the first time I heard that they were definitely going to stop using those wells.
Great.
Madam Chair, I'd be interested in knowing just when that well did develop, because I've been in my house since '66, and we were also having pumping on a lake called Spring Lake, my lake. And it was Spring Lake, and then you got Turtle, and then you have White Bear. It's all right on that same line. And that pumping system was in effect already in 1966 for my lake. And so they didn't pull it out until somewhere in the 80s that they destroyed the pump house and everything. So I'd have no idea if that
Well,
idea that
let's-
White Bear Lake had started as early as 90s.
Madam President, let's not confuse pumping here, okay?
Well, that's what it was.
So, White Bear Lake, for example, had a pumping stations that Ramsey County created in 1926.
Oh,
And they pumped from the aquifer into their lake. In
Yes.
1978, the Department of Natural Resources ordered them to stop this.
that's right.
So they didn't have any large impacts. In 1988, there was a drought. very large one. And river water went down. And there was some talk at the time that they were even going to connect the Red Lake, upper or lower, to the Mississippi River in order to provide water for Minneapolis itself and for St. Paul, both of them substantially there. And at that time, the Water Authority, during the next 10-year period in the 90s there, came out and they put a couple of feet on the Peltier Lake Dam because they had drawn Peltier Lake down, Peltier Lake, Otter Lake and such, Centerville Lake are all part of the St. Paul Water Authority system, still are, have been for well over 100 and some years, maybe 125 or something. They own on Centerville and Peltier, they own easements around parts of the edge of it, and have their pumping stations there. Well, this has become a tertiary source of water now. It's a backup system, but it's a ways away. But at that same time, in the 90s, when they put the couple of feet on the dam, they also built brand-new wells over in the Vadnais Heights area. And there, I don't know if there's 25 or 30 of them there, and those are the wells that Jason Mecklin from the DNR is talking about.
Good.
These wells weren't in action prior to the time period that you're
When they-
referring to in the
okay,
60s.
Good. Thank you for your long explanation. Thank you very much.
Anything else?
No, I'm fine.
So the Bald Eagle Area Association, their management has met and has voted that they would like to proceed with the assumption that there would be a renewal of the Bald Eagle Water Management District going forward and working with us on our plan to do that as a placeholder primarily, I think, at this point. Secondly, they're having a fundraiser. Anyone who would like to donate money to the Bald Eagle Area Association is invited to come tomorrow night to their annual fundraiser. It's actually fun.
You have your hat out right now by any chance?
No, I have my checkbook out.
Andrew Eggman. All I want to say is we were at Cap Region last night for MUD, and they have a beautiful new facility, and congrats to them.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It's very nice.
All right, with that, we can have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Now we'll go into our workshop meeting.